If you're just joining now, thank you so much for sharing your lunchtime with us. I'm very excited about everything we've got to cover today. If you'd like to say hello through the chat or give us a wave, feel free to do so. Just watching the numbers tick up as people join. I'll give it another minute or so because I don't think many of us ever join calls on time. Know what it's like. Thank you everyone that's saying hello in the chat. Lovely to see you. Welcome, welcome. Okay, I can see the number of people joining us leveled off, so I'll get cracking. Thank you again for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your time with us, and I hope you're excited like I am to learn more during the next hour or so. So we'll be basically spending the next hour talking about why doing good is such a good idea. You're probably like me seeing lots of things cropping up in the news at the moment, so I'm excited to be talking about something so topical. We'll be discussing why businesses are shifting towards prioritizing purpose and giving doing good the same weight as generating profits, or even more. And then we'll really focus in on the impact this has for our well-being and retention in the workplace. And we'll have some really practical tips for you to take away the rest of your day. So I am joined today by a brilliant panel. So I will start off with some introductions. Sanjay, if you'd like to go first.
Hi everyone, great to be here. I'm Sanjay. I run an organisation called OnHand. We do a lot of volunteering and also some climate action activity as well.
Thanks, Sanjay. And Erin?
Hello, good to be here. Really good to be here. So I'm Erin. I'm from Newcastle Building Society. I'm in our people team and I'm a strategic people partner with the society.
Thanks, Erin. And Paul?
Hi, I'm Paul Devoy. I'm the Chief Executive of Investors in People. We're a not-for-profit community interest company, and our purpose is to make work better by creating more organisations that invest in their people.
Thanks, Paul. And I'm Beth. So I'm the people lead at Investors in People. My job is all about making our work internally better. And I'll be hosting today, so I'll be running through the structure of the session, making sure we've got a cracking conversation going. And we'll get stuck into lots of questions and Q&A later on. So let's get into some stats. Why is doing good so important? Well, first up, 64% of millennials consider a company's social and environmental commitments when deciding where to work. So I'm sure lots of you are like me. You might be in an HR role, people lead, engagement is a priority. So I think this stat really goes to show how important purpose and doing good is for businesses now, as we all try and find the best possible talent. Another really powerful statistic here. So there's a 4% increase in productivity that you can unlock simply by increasing people's connection with your purpose or mission by 10%. Next up, 90% of consumers will switch brands to support a good cause, or would boycott organisations which they don't see as supporting causes that are important to them. So a real impact on bottom line too. And what I find interesting is that the business case is solid, and it has been for a while now. So why do we need to feel a renewed sense of urgency around this? Why are we talking about it today? Well, I'm sure top of all of our minds is the climate. And the biggest reason is that we can and should join the global efforts to tackle climate change. The alternative is a 1.5 degree increase in temperatures. In addition to this, as a people HR lead myself, as I said, there's another challenge which is right up in our homes, in our day-to-day work at the moment, and that's attracting and retaining talent. So a recent report found that 38% of employees will consider looking for a new job in the next year. So I'm sure, like me, anything that you can do to attract talent and to keep our workplaces as a really great place for the people that want to be with us, you'll welcome that information. So what I'll do now is go over to the panel for some questions, and I'll just stop sharing my slides so you can see their lovely faces. There we go. So I'm going to dive straight in and go to you first, Paul. Has Investors in People seen a shift in businesses wanting to do good?
Absolutely. The organisations that we speak to are very focused on purpose, and they know that by having a clear purpose and articulating that purpose to their employees and all their stakeholders, it gives real clarity about why they're there and why they make a difference to the world. So, you know, that whole notion of purpose and meaning is so important to people. And I think particularly following the pandemic, where people have been very reflective on life and what does it mean and why am I here, and organisations are doing the same. So, you know, and I think if you're being really commercial about it, it has a bottom line benefit as well, because as a result of people being really focused on the purpose, they focus on the things that matter, and they focus on concentrating and delivering the things that matter. That improves productivity, it improves engagement, and it improves sustainability of the organisation. So I think a world going forward where we're all focused on purpose, then no matter what it is that you do, every organisation can find the social utility in what they do and the meaning in it. And if you can really focus and be clear about that and making sure that drives through every aspect of your organisation, then I think it's a much more sustainable way forward.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul. And I'll go to you next, Sanjay. What type of shift are you seeing with the companies you work with?
Yeah, we're seeing two things, and it's a lot of what Paul said. So I think if I compare earlier in the year to where we are now, early in the year we'd be speaking to tens of companies, you know, interested in doing something that was good, great. At this point, we're just speaking to hundreds all of the time around purpose, delivering good, and climate stuff. And it's not just like CSR anymore. It used to be, you know, CSR, we want to do something good, or, you know, or we've got to tick a box. It's now all about, you know, I've got to do a bid, and it involves, you know, doing good in the local community. Can you help me do that? It's, I've got employees, and, you know, the great resignation's happening. How do I engage them? And they're all at home, and I can't do that. And it's, I've got customers who are looking at me and what our credentials are. Can you help? So the conversation's massively shifted. I'd say the biggest trend we've seen in the last few months is definitely eco-related. So we've seen over the summer, we started doing group-based eco cleanups around the country. So far, we've had over 600 employees engage in those, and that's in like 3 to 4 months. We weren't expecting that level. And what we've seen is it's grown like 30% month over month. We expected it to be a summer thing. We thought, yeah, this is great for August, September. It's even busier now in November. So real shift on the climate stuff.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sanjay. It's definitely top of my mind. I've been seeing, you know, more and more sort of conversation around the concept of eco-anxiety as well for people, increasingly feeling that we need to do something, we need to be part of a solution, and businesses can absolutely help with that. So, so Erin, over to you. Building societies are different, all for community over profit. As the world increasingly moves more towards profit with purpose, what can commercial businesses learn from building societies?
Thank you. I think so. For those who don't know, you know, as a building society, Newcastle Building Society, we're mutual, which means we're customer owned as an organisation, and our purpose, what our purpose is, we've been, you know, helping customers save for their future and buy their homes and protect what's really important to them, and we've been doing that for over 150 years now. So that focus on supporting our members has always been and will always be at the heart of our business, driving our actions. But I think as an organisation, we try to go beyond being mutual. So we wholeheartedly look to that purpose and use it as an anchor point and a focus. So for us, what that means is we're operating under that consistent guidance of how can we connect our communities to a better financial future. And you know, as others have touched on, it's been a challenging time, hasn't it? A particularly challenging time the last 2 years, but using that purpose and the focus on our purpose, it's really helped steer us calmly and successfully through what have been really uncertain times. And the impact of doing that has meant we've always put our colleagues and community first, and that means we always do the right thing that positively impacts people, even when that might not be the easiest path to take. So like others have touched upon, you know, it's a really interesting time to be asking this question, isn't it? You know, we've the pandemic led to the biggest change in the workplace since World War II, and with an increasing greater global focus on climate change, thank goodness, we are seeing people ask more about how sustainable and ethical is your business, and critically, how do you keep colleagues at the heart of your business and really focus on the experience they have and their engagement. So I think every organisation is at that crossroads where we're all trying to reimagine what does that future world of work look like, and there's definitely a noticeable increase in the number of employers who want to focus on that and think about their corporate social responsibility, like Sanjay touched on. But for us, that's been a huge priority for a long time now. So, we'll happily shout from the rooftops that we received our Platinum IIP accreditation last year, and we were thrilled to get that acknowledgement. But there's no way we could have reached that point had we not have been continuously focusing on that, and that being just really core to the DNA of the organisation.
Thanks, Erin. And wonderful to see some conversation happening through the chat as well. Please do get involved and let us know as well what your organisations are doing to do good business. So, the next thing that I'd like to focus on, especially as lots of us are joining from an HR perspective, is to discuss a little bit around why doing good is good for employee wellbeing and retention. So if I can go back to you first, Erin, why does MBS put community and colleagues first?
Yeah, as I say, the last couple of years, they've been so challenging, haven't they? And for all of us for different reasons. And it's probably in those challenging times where your resilience is really tested and how much you are committed to your purpose. For us, what that means is, we're a North East employer, and the North East in particular was significantly affected by the pandemic. So, we made a decision that our purpose and that social commitment is more important than ever, and really important that we stuck to it. But aside from that, it's the passion and the commitment of our colleagues that really helps make us successful and makes us different to others. And people join us, like you said at the start with some of those stats, they join and they stay because they can make a positive difference. And it's often a really personal endeavour for our colleagues, and we see just so many examples where our colleagues just go to unreal efforts to help our communities, whether that's, fundraising, volunteering, or building great relationships in the community to make a big difference for them. So it's really critical for us that our people strategy looks to create that inclusive environment where people feel really connected to purpose, and they've got that sense of belonging with the organisation, because that's when they'll do their best work, and that's when they're able to do their best work. So for us, our people strategy, we've got 3 pillars. One is creating a healthy and sustainable culture. The second is future-proof talent, and the third is creating a high-performance environment. But none of those things are possible without engaged people. So what we try to do is place the colleague experience at the heart of that people strategy and make sure it's absolutely central to everything that we do. So we're always coming back to that, what experience are our people having and how do we keep them engaged? And I guess part of the question was around, why is investing in people really important to the society? And, I can't answer that question fairly, I don't think, without highlighting what our partnership with IIP has meant. So for us, the big benefits it's given us is, it's allowed us to benchmark against global brands and really share best practice. So the feedback we've had from IIP over the number of years we've been members is has really helped us just take stock, reflect on our practices and work out how do we continuously improve. So it was brilliant for us in 2020. The assessment we had, it highlighted that we'd improved in every area since our previous report in 2017. So we were thrilled to do that and to be able to I guess keep building on what we're doing with people. That's something we're already doing from our survey in 2020 now. We've got lots of actions in place, and what it's meant is that we continue to get great engagement rates and the NPS rates with our people. And for some time now, we've been sitting in the top 25% of the financial sector. And that's definitely been a huge driver in attracting and retaining talent. And if you think back to the stat you shared at the beginning, there was a 38% of people are considering moving roles in the next 12 months. So it's critical we're keeping a hold of our great people, but also attracting really great people to the organisation in an ongoing way. So yeah, we're just really grateful for the partnership we've had with IIP and what it's meant for how we've been able to shape our culture over time.
Brilliant, thanks Erin, and congratulations on the platinum status as well. I know it's not an easy level to reach at all, so yeah, congrats.
Yeah, we were absolutely thrilled, just right.
And can you tell us a little bit more about how all of this activity translates into business performance?
Yeah, sure. So I think you have to be realistic. Commercial success is vital. It's that's what ensures your growth, your innovation, your infrastructure, and all of that is for the long-term benefit of our members. So we need that commercial success, and wholeheartedly, putting community and colleagues first has made sense commercially too. So we can't stress enough that that purposeful business is a really sound foundation. It's what builds sustainable and successful commercial enterprise, and it has continued to benefit our members and will do for some time, hopefully at least another 150 years. But think about what that means for us day to day. We make sure that our products and services are impactful, when they're commercially sound, but they're still strongly aligned and delivering on our purpose. And when we think about customer satisfaction, our NPS, which is what measures the loyalty of customer relationships, I'd made my notes that it was 81, but actually I checked again today and it's at 82, which is brilliant. Always increasing. That's a phenomenal rate to be sitting at, and it's their happiness and their loyalty that's going to keep us commercially successful. But I think all of that stems from how we work with them and how much importance we place on doing the right thing by our members and our people.
Fantastic, thanks Erin. And I promise I will get to you, Sanjay and Paul. I've just got one more question for Erin. Could you tell us how volunteering has been a big part of your culture?
Yeah, it's been a huge part of who we are. So we've talked a bit around colleague experience, how critical it is, and for us, community engagement is one of the ways that we create really special moments that matter. So in our report in 2020 from IIP, 91% of our colleagues agreed that the values of the organisation guide the way we work, and they cited our community focus as a key reason for joining and staying. And volunteering's always been a big part of our identity. And I guess that's the reason why our partnership with OnHand has been so beneficial and successful. So it's been a really great vehicle for us, particularly through the pandemic, because it helped colleagues continue to help out in their communities, but in a different and a safe manner. And I think having that digital platform that makes different types of volunteering accessible and flexible is a huge benefit, because we've got a really diverse group of colleagues with different interests and had really different levels of comfort, and continue to, around how they can interact with people in a safe way. So it's been it's been such a win-win initiative for us, where I hope you get that sense today, but we're definitely a human business, and we're mindful that there's increasing automation and digitization, but having that human touch point, it's a point of difference and certainly a driver for engagement. And I guess think about some of the positive impacts volunteering's had. It has a hugely positive impact on mental health and well-being and loneliness, and that's for both sides, isn't it? It's the people that are volunteering plus the people that are helping. And I'm grinning because I think about the stories that we hear from people that our colleagues have helped out with, and they're just fabulous stories. We've had colleagues described as guardian angels, and I think seeing that impact we have out there through volunteering in our community, it's really special. We've gone so far that we actively promote OnHand with our members too, so it's just yet another way to help the community get the support they need. And you know, when you touched on climate change at the beginning, never a more relevant topic, is there? But I just think, yeah, big shout out to the OnHand team for the work you're doing around the climate crisis too, and how we tackle that. You know, just this year we updated our strategic pillars to have a greater focus on environment and sustainability. I think as many organisations are doing, but it's certainly something that colleagues want to make a difference in. But I think it's not always easy to know how you can do that as individuals. So seeing that they can volunteer and with climate challenges, learn more about how to make a difference, and even go so far as, you know, planting trees in some of the highest impact regions. It's been such fantastic, tangible ways to make that personal impact. So yeah, I think volunteering is a huge thing for us. And yeah, it's just been brilliant to be able to partner with OnHand to do that in a different way, and yeah, keep enhancing how we're doing that as well.
Fantastic, thanks, Erin. And that's the perfect segue into a question for you, Sanjay. So why is doing good so important for employee retention?
Thanks very much, and Erin, that was really it was wonderful hearing about the Building Society, and I think there's so much probably everyone listening can learn from the philosophy building societies have. And then thanks for the nod to OnHand. That's really cool. Look, I'll go back to some stats. So why do any of these things help with retention, and you know, why should you care? And you know, I'm sure everyone on the call cares, otherwise they wouldn't be listening. But you know, some of the stats from Glassdoor last year. Hey, the average cost for hiring is like 3K. The average time spent on recruiting is 27.5 days. I think from HR Review, they estimate the total lost productivity and time spent trading is like 28K per employee. So, you know, why should you care about retention and anything that can help with it? You know, the stats, you know, you may all know those kind of stats, but I like starting with them. The other point that's been made already today is around the Great Resignation, right? So that's very real. I saw some stats this morning about searches for resignation letters and how to write a resignation letter. They're at all-time highs. They've never been higher than they are right now. So even if you're not seeing that in your business yet, you're bound to. It's bound to happen over the next few months to a year. So if anything can help, grab it. In this session, I think we've already highlighted purpose can be huge. And from the stats that Beth started with right at the start, unprecedented rise in loyalty for the orgs that are getting it right. And it's not difficult to connect the dots here, right? Bethany also already mentioned eco-anxiety, and that's very real as well. The trends on that are going crazy. It's not hard to join the dots here. But if you can somehow give team members, and I do think it's businesses' responsibility set to help here, if you can give them some hope because there's actions you as an organization are taking, and you're giving ways for your employees to engage with that, you start getting to that point of we're introducing purpose and we're involving. So you've got purpose and engagement, you know, and that leads to retention, right? So there's ways here that are relatively straightforward. You know, OnHand is one of those, but there's many others. There's ways here that are relatively straightforward to try and tackle some of those new anxieties and new trends that are coming out. And then if I briefly talk about well-being, you know, if you do good, you feel good. There's multiple studies on that kind of stuff. Very happy to share more and more about that, but the linkage is really, really clear. The science backs it. It releases various chemicals. The studies back it as well. It's probably a very good time for relaunching, I'm biased, but it's a very good time for relaunching something like volunteering policies because of all of those trends and, you know, the remote and hybrid world we're in.
Brilliant, thanks, Sanjay. And being a millennial myself, I can't speak for the whole of my generation, but you know, when I graduated, it was in the wake of the last recession, and as a result, I think, you know, me and my peers, we've all moved jobs a lot more frequently than perhaps generations before us. And the thing for me that keeps me flipping the duvet in the morning and jumping the half a meter from my bed to my laptop is knowing that the work that Investors in People does has a purpose, and it gives you that sense of control and meaning within your bubble, even over the last year when so much has felt out of control and uncertain. So I'll go to you next, Paul.
One comment there, because I think that's really
sure.
interesting. So the point around, if your company already has purpose, and you know, I'm lucky to be, you know, OnHand, Investors in People clearly has purpose. A building society, its purpose is just built in, and not everyone has that luxury. I totally get that. Not every company has the luxury of purpose is just built into what we do. So, you know, if you're not one of those companies, how do you introduce it is a really interesting thing to consider.
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic question. It's maybe something that we could pick up on in the chat if anybody's got any ideas they would like to share. And equally, Paul, if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think any organisation that exists for a reason. It must be providing some sort of service or utility that people value. So to give you the most extreme example that I've heard, which really struck a chord with me, it was the head of employee engagement. I think it was United Utilities, the lady worked for, and there was a documentary on BBC Two about it, and it was the guys that go down to clean the fat burgers in the sewers. Yeah, but they were able to explain to them how valued they were by society because they were doing the most dirty, awful job. But unless they did that, the drains would block up and it would be coming up into the street. So, you know, they got hugely positive feedback from the documentary because people really valued what they did. Although it was the most horrible job you can imagine, they were doing something really important for the rest of us and that the rest of us really valued. And through that, they were able to really articulate the meaning for those guys and what they did. And instead of being something they might have been ashamed of or, you know, they didn't want to talk about, they were proud of the fact that they were providing this service that meant all of us would have a cleaner, better environment. So for me, if you can find meaning in a job like that, the worst possible job you could probably imagine on the face of it, you can create meaning in almost any role because you connect it back to why we're here as an organisation, why it's making a difference, whether that's making paper clips or, you know, running a sandwich shop. There's meaning in what you do, and I think if we can find that and articulate that really well, it gives people a pride in what they do, and it gives them more a sense of that they're making a positive impact. As you talked about, Beth, the duvet flip. I'm doing something worthwhile here. It's not just a wage at the end of the day. So that would be my only added contribution to that.
Thanks, Paul. And I'll look to you as well for any additional advice on how companies can increase wellbeing and retention. Yeah,
I don't know who said this, but it might have been Richard Branson, I can't remember. I remember someone saying that if you look after employees, your employees will look after your organisation. And I think too often we forget that. So, you know, someone can't come into work and give the best version of themselves if they are not feeling great or if they're, for whatever reason, they're not giving their best performance. So it's incumbent upon us as leaders in organisations is to try and create the conditions where they can bring the best version of themselves to work every day. And generally that means creating the right kind of culture, having well-trained managers who, you know, manage their people well, giving people opportunities for development and progression, and obviously, as we've said all the way through this webinar, connecting it back to the meaning and purpose of what you do. So having all of those ingredients in place, I think should be a minimum expectation that anybody that goes to work on a daily basis. It should be, you know, if it's not there, then as an organisation, you should be embarrassed. And I think it's not unreasonable that having that as a baseline expectation is something we should expect of all employers.
100%. Thanks, Paul. Thank you for the commentary coming through in the chat as well. So I'm sure, like me, you're hungry for any advice and tips and practical learnings that we can get from the panel today. So I'll move on to that now, and I'll head to you, Erin, please. Could you give us an example of how MBS would prioritise a community project where there are clear choices that might have been better for the bottom line?
Yeah, definitely. We've got stacks of examples, to be honest, where we've just done good for our communities. But I think some of them that stand out are more recent examples, you know, through the pandemic. So, I mean, obviously it was a challenging time for businesses, you know, so both for your profit, the capacity of your people, but for us that never got in the way of us doing the right thing. So we watched our region and the challenges we were facing, and you know, we looked at how do we make the biggest difference right now. So our thoughts on that was around leaning into employability, connection and well-being. So we do that every day through our branch network and through our colleagues in the communities. But some other notable contributions we made in the last 2 years are, as the pandemic was first happening, we donated £100,000 to the Coronavirus Recovery Fund. And honestly, that was a really uncertain economic situation for us. We had no idea what was about to happen to the business, but we didn't hesitate to become the first corporate donor to do that and to contribute to that fund, and make sure, we were helping people in our region because we knew they needed our support. Across 2020, we made a £1.5 million commitment to good causes, focusing our impact where it is needed most to aid the region's recovery. And then this year, so far this year, alongside our long-term commitment, the Newcastle United Foundation, we've also provided £111,000 in support grants across, the most critical areas. So for us, that's in delivering employability skills and experience, addressing food poverty, and helping with debt management too. And we were thrilled this year because we passed a major milestone of donating over £3 million to the Sir Bobby Robson Foundation, which is a phenomenal foundation. Those outside the region might not be too familiar, but check it out. The work they do is just spectacular. But that made us by far their largest corporate donor. So, we've done all of that through times where it might not have been so easy to do that, but we lean into what the region needs and make sure we prioritise that.
Thanks, Erin. I find MBS so inspiring. I love hearing all the stories about the things that you're doing. And through this investment and focus, can you tell us how that fits into the kind of ambition and growth plans for MBS?
Yeah, I thank you for your kind words. I do. I think I'm a big advocate for the organisation, as you'd expect, but they make it easy when they give you lots of good examples to talk about, So slightly different tech around expansion, but I think it's a really interesting one to highlight. So, we continue to invest in our branch network, and it really feels like we're bucking the trend with that, because many other financial services organisations, they're closing branches. So we'll have all seen that on our the high street. There are a lot of shop closures and not too many banks on them anymore. But we're doing the opposite. So just recently, we've moved a branch in West End in Newcastle to a better location, and we've also refurbished our Bishop Auckland branch. They're huge investments to go through, and I think really excitingly, we continue to find innovative ways to utilise that branch network using community spaces. So prior to the pandemic, we'd launched 2 new community branches in Hawes and Wooler, and that was bringing local financial services to towns that had been abandoned by the bank. So, both branches in those regions were received really positively by local people who were just delighted to see that service return to the high street. And because of the community nature and the hub we've set up, we've become really critical parts of those communities. It's been brilliant. And next year we're looking to open a branch in Tynemouth's library building. So working really closely with North Tyneside Council to open that community branch. And again, that's supporting that reintroduction of local financial services to Tynemouth High Street. We're doing all that physical stuff, and I think we are genuinely a part of a growing movement to help our high streets and town centres transform and make them really fit for future. So, our Chief Customer Officer, he's on the board of the National High Streets Task Force, and we work with all sorts of partners and businesses and continue to collaborate with the North East of England Chamber of Commerce, because we get how important it is to be supporting our high streets and towns across the regions, particularly now as they're managing that pace of change impacting them just get tougher and tougher. And alongside all of that work, we have lots of partner organisations, so people like the Prince's Trust, Newcastle United Foundations, and we work with them to make sure we're delivering meaningful opportunities for young people. So we support them to build workplace skills and experience with a view to turn it into real employment with permanent roles. So I think our growth plans are multifaceted, but they're the one thing they've all got in common is they're always rooted in doing what's right and investing in our communities.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Erin. And speaking of the kind of pace of change and thinking about the future, one thing that's at the top of my mind at the moment is hybrid working, and the future of that, and how we can make sure that it's sustainable and good for our well-being. So I'll turn to you, Sanjay, for any tips or advice on that.
Yeah, I'll probably refer a little bit back to my prior bias for volunteering. Clearly, that's what we do here. But it feels like, and from the organisation we're speaking to a lot, it feels like right now is a wonderful moment to be doing good and engaging your teams in doing good, because we know, hey, it's purpose, it's engagement, that leads to retention. The problem is the world has changed, right? The world has changed in this last 12 months, and it continues to change. So whilst we started working with Newcastle Building Society whilst they're all working from home, and that was fantastic. Well, the world's starting to shift again. It's now remote and hybrid, and so you've got some people come to the office, some that aren't. You've got teams that are well overdue team bonding, and they're trying to get together actually a lot more frequently. And so whilst in the same breath I say, hey, it's a great time to relaunch volunteering, what you did before, actually, it's got to be different. It's got to be different, and it's got to address wherever your volunteers are, your employees are, so they're all, scattered across multiple locations, and it's got to cater for when they want to get together, and that's much, much harder to do than it was before. We can help, there's other companies that can help, but it's much, much harder to do. Potentially one thing that can help in this scenario is things like policy. So if you did have volunteering policies in the past, they're probably outdated at this point. And so back to my point around, it's a great time to engage the teams on volunteering again. Probably need to renew that policy. If anyone wants one, let us know. We've got ones you can download and stuff. It's really easy. But addressing how those kinds of engagements change in the remote and hybrid worlds, absolutely top of mind. Would love to help anyone that has questions on that kind of stuff. Oh, Beth, you might be on mute.
Oh gosh, I get the prize. I would really love to hear from the audience in the chat if you've got any advice as well on your lessons from managing hybrid working. It's something that I'm always interested in, and I absolutely recognise as well, Sanjay, that advice on looking at policies. It's not always the most exciting thing to do. But it can actually be a really good opportunity to engage everybody in thinking about how, the nitty-gritty, the policies and the structures that you have can align to goals around well-being and doing good, and get involvement on that. That's something we did actually at Investors in People.
I think it gives great certainty, right? So it's certainty where there is now doubt because the world's changed a bit. So how do these policies now raise a new world? A lot of them may be out of date. So it's a good time to relook. And I agree with you. They're not the most exciting things, but they really do help.
And there's definitely more and more, isn't there, on how you can jazz them up a little bit and make them more user friendly. It doesn't have to be the old doorstop handbook anymore. Any thoughts on that, Paul, that you'd like to chip in with?
Yeah, well, as you know, Beth, this is a subject close to my heart, given that I'm actually in a shed at the bottom of my garden. I've been a big advocate of flexible working, really, I would like to call it. From my point of view, I don't care if Beth, for example, does her best work at 4 o'clock on a Sunday morning, but wants to do something at 3 o'clock on a Monday afternoon for her well-being or whatever. For me, it's about when she's going to bring the best version of herself to the task is the most important thing. The only caveat that I put on it is that your flexibility should not be to the detriment of one of your colleagues, because it gets in the way of them doing what they need to do. So it needs to be within that context. But as long as your work and the way that you organise your work isn't to the detriment of the organisation or one of your colleagues, and more importantly, the client, then I don't see why we should have this fixed paradigm about 9 to 5 and Monday to Friday. It really doesn't help. And I saw a stat about a month ago saying that there was something like 3 million people, and I think it's predominantly women. If organisations embrace flexible working in a much more radical way, they would be able to rejoin the labour market. And given how constrained the labour market is at the moment and how tight it is, surely it's to the benefit of all employers to actually be more flexible in the way that we organise work. And there's a huge pool of talent there that we could be bringing in, which would be absolutely key for the economy to start growing again. So for me, this is a win-win, but it requires a paradigm shift in how we manage people. The whole notion of someone being there 95 and you can see them on a desk in front of you, and unless you can see them, you can't have comfort that they're working hard enough, or they're not slacking. And ultimately, if we manage people on outcomes and we do that well and we're clear about expectations and outcomes, we should be trusting people to organise their work in order to meet those outcomes. And if you're employing people that you don't trust, my question to you would be, why are you employing people that you don't trust? And if you employ people that you don't trust so much that you have to put all these procedures and everything around to watch them, then there's something wrong. So for me, a mature organisation that has an adult-to-adult relationship with their employees, where there's a balance between what works for them and what works for the company, has huge amounts of win-wins right across the board. But I think a lot of managers who were stuck in the past were forced to accept some of these changes over the last 2 years, and some of them are still hankering back to the way things used to be. But I think we've got to keep pushing on this agenda, because I think it's really important for people's well-being, not having to stress about when you pick the kids up from school or your caring responsibilities for an elderly parent or whatever. And it's brilliant for the organisation because we get access to much more talent. So it's something I bang on about a lot, as Beth will probably testify. And I think it's something that we should be championing as a important agenda across the country.
Absolutely. And just in case anyone in the audience is wondering, I don't work at 4 o'clock on a Sunday morning. That's a level of flexibility.
Bye.
No, thanks, Paul. So I'm just going to, nudge the audience. If you've got any questions, please do pass them through the Q&A section. We'll be getting to that in just a sec. Before we do, I'd like to do a quick fire round with the panel, please. So the question is, what is your #1 top tip for an easy to implement idea that businesses could take away today to increase employee purpose or create a sense of belonging? Who would like to go first?
I'm happy to
Erin,
go.
First off, the unmute.
Yeah. Otherwise, they steal the ideas, don't they? And you're left with nothing. So you got to go first. Yeah, I think for colleagues, my #1 tip would be keep your engagement a constant focus and really harness the power of your people. So we take great pride in listening to understand the impact we can make. So, we're really aware that we've got distinct parts of the business that have different needs, and we've worked really hard to tune into that and try and be as colleague-led as possible. So we've got multiple ways of doing that. We have a colleague insight forum, we have a team of wellbeing advocates, we have Eureka, which is a colleague-led continuous improvement program, a diversity and inclusion committee, and we're soon embarking on reverse mentoring as well, which will see our senior leaders, benefiting from the thoughts and innovation from other colleagues with different backgrounds to their own, so it can really tap into that diversity of thought. And yeah, if I can do another tip, if that's all right, I think being really clear in your communication. So any opportunity you can, I guess it goes back to what Paul was saying earlier about how you communicate in people's value, but really connect people to that purpose and have structures that recognise and reward people for their contribution to the purpose. So, for us, and I've said this a number of times today, so apologies for saying it again, but it always comes back to how we make a positive impact in our community. So, an example we had was our winner of our Chief Executive Colleague of the Year award last year went on to be put forward for the North East Charity Awards Corporate Ambassador, and she won that too. And she's gone from strength to strength in our organisation. But we try really hard to champion and recognise people for what they are contributing to our purpose. So I think, yeah, that's what I'd encourage others to do. It makes a big difference.
Thanks, Erin. And they were such good tips. I'll forgive you for doing 2 rather than 1. Sanjay, I'll go to you next.
Thanks, Beth. So you asked for easy ones. Mine's maybe not that easy, but I was thinking about, so if there's one thing I'd say to bring back into your organisations after a session like this, well, there's good news, right? ESG on the rise, and the trend for ESG, environmental social governance, that's only going in one way. It's only going to get more and more important. But when we speak to companies, typically we're finding there's a disconnect on how that's approached within companies. So typically there is a green team somewhere over there, or a sustainability team somewhere over there. And actually it's not that connected with the volunteering team that's somewhere over here, usually run by a bunch of employees doing it as a side thing in, when they've got extra time, by the way, no one's got extra time. And in some organisations, hey, in much larger organisations, there is one team. There's a CSR team, whatever, that looks after it. But typically, we're finding actually there's a disconnect between those two teams. My point for you, if you're going back into your business today, is actually bring them together. So how do you bring the E and the S together within your organisations? And everyone's going to thank you for it, right? ESG is only going one direction. If you don't have targets on it, internally, it will be a board target, it will be a CEO target, and that thing will only just come down the organization. The trend is only going one way. So, raise your hand. If it's not being talked about, raise your hand. And when it becomes something that, the board and the C-level want to care about, hey, you'll be top in line to, lead that effort. And clearly, if you're in this session, you kind of care about that. So, put your hand up. I think everyone, board, CEO downwards, will thank you for bringing those two teams together.
Love it. Thank you, Sanjay. So audience, just by being here today, you're already ahead of the curve. That's a nice message to take away. And Paul, lastly to you.
Yeah, I think I would agree with all the things that Sanjay and Erin said. I think the thing for me is, we've talked about purpose a lot, is to create a dialogue with your staff around what's the meaning of the organisation for you? What does working here mean? What's the purpose of what we're doing? Really clearly articulate that, and then connect that back to each individual's job, so that they know what their duvet flip is, to use your phrase, Beth. What is it that gets them out of bed in the morning, and how are they connected towards delivering that purpose and that meaning? I think if you can do that, that gives you a really good platform. And it links back to one of my favourite books on this topic, which is Dan Pink's Drive. His research has shown that if you've got purpose and you've got autonomy to do your job well, and you're doing a job that you want to get better at, they're the 3 key ingredients for staff engagement. So for me, you should always start with purpose, get the purpose clear, get it understood, get it articulated, and get it connected back to that individual day job.
Thanks, Paul. And I feel like I must disclose, the duvet flip phrase is one that I have borrowed from Jack Parsons, who is an excellent speaker on this. So if you are looking to follow someone, take a look at him.
Yeah.
So before we close up, I will just want to circle back to a question that came through in the chat, actually, from Olivia. Bear with me 1 second while I scroll through. So Olivia had a fantastic question. How do you measure impact of volunteering? Can volunteering on environmental projects contribute to a company's net zero targets? Sanjay, I might look to you for the answer on that one.
Right, and it's a great question, and part of the volunteering world up until now, corporate volunteering, I hope I'm not being too harsh in saying it's never worked that well. In some organisations, it's been fantastic, building societies especially, like something like Newcastle Building Society. But most organisations, it's been like a 5 to 10% engagement level, which to me, because most companies actually give time off for this stuff, that's an epic fail. And the other epic fail that goes alongside the engagement on volunteering is the tracking. Tracking has not been fantastic in a lot of organisations, possibly even the ones that do it really well. So the difference has got to be, how do you use tech? How do you use tech to bring volunteering into the 21st century, mobile first experience, where the whole thing is tracked? It's tracked in an automated way that individuals don't have to do the tracking themselves, because you know what, everyone's super busy. So the first point is use tech. If you're going to take volunteering seriously, you need to track what's happening. So use tech to automate that. Yes, OnHand is one of those kind of solutions. There are others, but if you're going to take it seriously, get some tech that automates that stuff for you. if you do so, the tracking from volunteering and the impact becomes incredibly reportable, and it's real. So as the example, I guess, as OnHand, OnHand is an app. You go on it, you find things that are local to you, you accept a mission, just like choosing a takeaway on Deliveroo. As soon as you complete it, you hit that in the app. It's automated. The tracking is automated. The reporting is in the app, so you can see how many missions you've done. There's trees that get added as a result of that, and your company gets a dashboard for every employee that tots up all of those numbers in an automated way. The related question was, can you do climate stuff in that context? And the answer is yes. So again, I'll talk about OnHand, but there will be other solutions out there. In OnHand, we've introduced something called pledges. They're like climate lifestyle nudges. Eat less meats, wash your clothes at a lower temperature, line dry your clothes instead of using the dryer. Simple things that anyone can do that collectively add up to massive impact. But again, you've got to track what the impact is. So the way we do it is we say, hey, do that thing, but do it twice a week for a month. Because we've put it that specifically, we can measure what the CO2 reduction is for that action. And then collectively, of course, it's massive. So we track all of that kind of stuff for you. So I guess the answer is use tech to track. And yes, you can track the impacts for climate-related activity as well.
Fantastic, thanks, Sanjay. And my other panel members, anything to add on measuring the impact of volunteering?
One thing I'd say, I guess, when measuring the impact, maybe not. I think Sanjay's covered off the, I guess, the impact on climate, but you can measure the impact on your colleague engagement as well, and I think that is really critical. So I think I highlighted stats earlier that came through our IIP report of how important it was, and we do a monthly engagement survey, colleague voice with our colleagues, and it continues to come through that, and we see the impact it has. So yeah, I think there are other ways to measure the impact that volunteering can have on your organisation too.
Thank you, Erin. So I haven't seen any more questions come through in the chat. I'll just pause for a sec to see if anything does come through, or if any of the panel have noticed any points that you'd like to pick up on and expand.
I think I noticed one comment earlier. It wasn't quite a question, but it was a really interesting one. It's around how you address hybrid worlds and keep people connected. And it was around a suggestion from Sarah that they have a weekly 2-hour team meeting, which helps people feel connected, long but not massively informal. But also a tag-on point, which is, I do think it's important that people are seen, even if it's via video, which is interesting, right? So I think that's a really interesting comment, and probably worthy of some feedback from this group. So I agree. I think the seeing people is really important, in person or on video. Certainly we have team members who typically turn their videos off, and it's because Wi-Fi is terrible, or they just don't fancy being on camera that day. That's totally fine. Someone doing that consistently, you kind of want to figure out why. So yeah, I kind of agree with the comment. Wondered if anyone else had comments on that point.
Paul?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said there. I think honestly we'd be making things up if I was going to try and say any more than that.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. And hybrid working is it's a new world for all of us, isn't it? And it's one to really look after your colleagues through. I think we're referring to it as a test and learn phase. We will when you keep trying things in different ways, see how we go and evolve and adapt. But the one thing we're trying to do really well from the outset is keep talking to your colleagues and find out how are they doing and what's working well for them, and what support do they need, because everyone's got different views, different needs, and different types of support. So yeah, I think just being really close to people as you're adjusting and adapting as well is critical.
Interesting to see the comments coming in. So there's one from Emma saying, with a company policy, employees must have their cameras on, all team meetings, just not culture. So super interesting to see that. And then another comment, we have a weekly wellness meeting for it's drop in, drop out, the virtual coffee and catch up. Really nice. And a separate comment on that comment from Nicola, that they have speakers attend those to give tips on wellbeing, which is lovely. We haven't done that.
It's interesting the cameras on and off. So we have like a parent and carer wellbeing network, and one of the things we say in that is come along, you don't have to talk, you don't have to contribute if you don't want to, you can have your camera off if you don't want your camera on as well. So I think there is great benefit when you can see each other. It helps with that connection, but I guess we're just, people are comfortable, and if you do the right thing by them, you've got to lean into that and let people do what's right for them.
Yeah, I can tell you a funny story about that. My wife works in a school, and they had an in-service day, and they were getting an online training course, and one woman didn't realise that she had her camera on, and she was standing doing her iron when she was
Oh yeah,
seen her iron.
well,
Which I don't think she was meant to be doing when she was supposed to be concentrating on the training. Cameras can be dangerous things.
Certainly. And my biggest hazard is I have the world's friendliest postman, George, and if he sees I'm talking to people, which is why I've dipped the blinds today, he'll wave at everyone on the screen as he goes by. And there's times I've ran the door and he's gone, I've got nothing for you, Erin, I just wanted to wave at the people on your screen. So cheers, George.
It's adorable. Awesome. Well, I think that's a great place to pause. I am seeing some fantastic comments coming through in the chat as well. So perhaps as part of the follow-up, we could do a roundup of all the things that we've captured here. I just want to say a huge, massive thank you to our panel. Fantastic advice, really inspirational stories, and some really good practical tips to take away as well. So thank you for that. And thank you, of course, to the audience as well for being so engaged and giving us lots of other suggestions and things to talk about. Hope everyone has a lovely day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.